The Athene Real Talk Podcast explores controversial ideas to stimulate debate and active thinking. These ideas do not always reflect Athene's personal views. Welcome to the Athene Real Talk Podcast.
He has been called the best gamer in the world, hands down.
World-famous gamer and philanthropist Athene.
Gaming for Good, it's called, has raised more than $20 million.
Using his notoriety to raise money for charity.
On activism, science, culture, and self-development.
Proud to have him in the studio today. I would not want to take you on in a video game.
I've been breaking my head on how can I explain turning making sense into your core value, and I've come with a certain explanation. I will explain it to you guys and see how you guys can make sense out of it. But basically, turning making sense your core value is not a process you can do rationally. And that's something a lot of people misinterpret. They hear that, they think about it, and they think by reflecting on it and thinking about it, it will click. But that's not how it works. And let me tell you why. Like, it might work for some people, but for most people, that's not gonna work. Because adopting making sense on a subconscious level is an emotional process. And the best way of wrapping your head around it is by imagining if you'd have to explain it to your inner child. You might wonder, like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Like, when you were a kid, your neural activity was more subconscious because you didn't have all these advanced, intellectual parts of the brain as developed. Most of you guys, almost all of you, when you were really young, you were wondering and asking questions and trying to make sense of stuff. The moment you can start speaking and wonder, you ask, why this, why that, why that? And most of you guys, if not everyone, got slapped here in the face here and there, and as a result was drifting away from the idea of trying to understand the world. And some people get, like God shoved up their mouth. Other people get other values shoved up their mouth. And as a result, you start adopting these flawed and dysfunctional beliefs that causes a lot of contradictions and paradoxical conflict in your head. But as you don't have the ability to answer it, you just take it for granted to cope with it. But the problem with that is, like, you start creating a very big, pile of very inconsistent foundation which you can't really stand on. And I know this is not applicable to everyone, but to most people. The reason why your subconsciousness guides what you do is because your subconsciousness has been there the longest, also in evolution. And as a result, just as with animals, like, what it does is tries to survive. And if you feel more safe by believing in God, and if that suddenly gives you, the ability to take away a lot of the existential fears, then you'll just adopt God and boom, solved. You get emotionally attached to it, done. Whether it's God or spirituality or whatever. But the thing is, like, when you adopted the concept of God or spirituality or whatever, you didn't do that because you thought about it. It just comes and happens naturally because of education or social conditioning or whatever. And that is basically the case with most stuff. Most of the stuff in your life, if not almost everything, happens subconsciously. Even your thoughts, your desire, your will to do things, you think you have a lot of control, but it's an illusion. You don't really have so much control. Most of your actions and your desires are being pushed subconsciously, and that's why sometimes you can go like, yeah, but I don't want to procrastinate. Why do I procrastinate? Because your core subconscious most valuable thing might be comfort or freedom or whatever, or happiness. Then why would you do something if at that point you feel more comfort or more chill or whatever by just sitting on your ass? But as a result, if you keep doing that, it starts going against comfort and against your happiness and against your freedom in a sense. And that is why you start experiencing conflict. But if your subconsciousness adopts making sense as a core value, then your primal desire will be making sense. And just as you are sitting on your ass, and sitting on your ass is directed by your subconscious drive, rather than sitting on your ass being directed by your subconscious drive for comfort, you will think, oh, I need to make sense. And that's why it's so important to rewire your subconsciousness, which everybody can do, with the concept of making sense or with the value of making sense. So you might wonder and go like, yeah, but how do I do that? Just as much as believing in God or all spirituality or all these other core values you've adopted through life in a very impulsive way, you've done that because your subconsciousness thought that was the way for you to survive. That was the way for you, to make all these needs come to fruitful, or whatever you want to call it. Like whether it's love or fear or anger or warmth or safety or trust. These emotions that are very primitive are being satisfied by a certain value. And as a result, you feel a certain level of, safety. Just like animals want to feel safe. And the reason why you care so much about what other people think about you and stuff is because it goes back in time. When you look at tribals where you get rejected from the tribe, you die. And that's why you need that feel to fit in. Either way, what I just want to explain here is, if you have the ability to understand that your subconsciousness is governed by emotions and not rationality, you might find a better way of absorbing the core value of making sense. It's actually much more applicable to most people, because then it's about convincing the inner child that making sense as a core value will do you more good. And the way you convince a child is not with arguments. The way you convince a child is by showing it that you can trust it. You need to give them the feeling that it can trust making sense. Like when you just have to think about the idea, you'll experience a lot of fears, but you gotta be sure and you gotta feel safe, feel like you will have less fears and you can trust it. And that's the thing. If you start understanding that, you won't go about it in the wrong way. Because you might really overthink and think like, yeah, rationally this and that, but that's not how you can adopt it. Most people can't adopt it right way. The way you adopt it is by making it part of your inner child to absorb it. And the moment you do, it can really be euphoric or catharsis or whatever, because suddenly your drive that is now dictated by your other core value will suddenly be making sense. And you want to start absorbing information such because you know that everything makes sense and you can trust that. And that's what you have to tell. Say like everything happens for a reason, and making sense gives you the better tools to figure that out. And that gives you a level of safety, a level of trust, and a level of having a home. That value gives you that home. And if you're fully aware of that you have to absorb it on a fundamental emotional level rather than on a rational level, because of course, obviously, on a rational level, making sense is damn easy to make sense of that should be what your core value is. But the reason why it's hard to adopt it is because it doesn't happen on an emotional level. And we are emotional beings. So if you meditate on that and you start realizing that, you can click into it. Then you might say like, yeah, it doesn't work for me. But let me tell you something. If it doesn't work for you, then figuring out how you can make it work for you allows you to draw a map that would work for everybody that is similar like you. So you do the world a very big favor figuring that out, because all the people like you will end up making sense if they have that knowledge. And as a result, the world will start making a lot more sense. You'd actually have quite a big impact. So it's quite a big reason to do so. Rob738, I'm still scared of it. I don't want to lose my comfort, my family. Like, Rob, let me tell you something. That's the normal gut reaction, because your current core value sorts out a lot of fears, right? So if you take that away, you suddenly you have a gap. You basically have a void you have to fill, and all these fears come up. But the thing is, if you make making sense your core value, you will have more comfort. You will have a better relationship with your family. All your core values you have right now will be more fulfilled. Of course, if you tell that to your inner child, he won't believe you. He will still have fear and crawl under the bed and go like, no, stay away from me. But if you tell him and you make it very clear, like, listen, all these questions you've asked and all these fears you have piled up, there is a reason for why it happened, and there's also an answer for it. And making sense will allow you to see that. And everything makes sense. It's fine, it's cool. You really gotta, on an emotional level, almost, like comfort your inner child. And then it's so much easier to try that. I know it's quite scary, but I guarantee you it's going to change your life for the better. I guarantee, I want to put my hand in the fire. Guarantee it's going to make your life better. You know what I started realizing? I started realizing something really crazy. And that is how impulsive we all are as beings. We really think we have a choice, right? But the more I thought about all this subconscious core value shit, the more I started realizing that people are just directed by their subconsciousness. They do the most stupid shit. If your core value on a subconscious level is stupid, you'll just do stupid shit. It's that simple. You don't have so much control. If your core value is having fun, you just do everything to just have fun. Even if it goes against your own health and everything. It's just crazy. And then suddenly you start understanding why people live the way they live. It's because their core value, what they think, what the subconsciousness has adopted because it believed that was going to give it safety and strength and survive, is not accurate with reality. And that's why this is so important. So making sense takes the subconscious decision making to conscious mind. Well, Bonbon, let me explain you. What I learned a few days ago is not your conscious mind making these decisions. It's your subconscious mind making the decision, and then your conscious mind trying to make sense out of it. That's what happened. But if you make making sense your subconscious priority, everything that is thrown at you will make sense. And if it doesn't, you will start wondering, why doesn't it? Intuitively, you will have an urge to make sense of things. Isn't that crazy? I think that's so fascinating. I didn't know that before. But I realized that because I never understood why people didn't make sense, but now I understand. They just run their core value. That's their operation system. So if their core value is family, everything in their life they do will be directed towards their family. And same with like a mother. Let's say a mom is just a normal girl, just lives her life, unhealthy, whatever. Suddenly she has a child. They stop smoking. The only reason why that happens is because their core value changed from living the life, the good life, to becoming a mom and taking care of the child. And you think like, yeah, it's because she's a mother, right? That she suddenly takes care of her child. Fuck that shit. You got bad moms as well. Moms that are not so good moms are moms that when they have a child, their subconscious core value doesn't become taking care of the child. And that's mainly the case for mothers that weren't ready yet to become mother. Don't you guys find that fascinating? So the reason why you're a good mom or a bad mom is not because you consciously decide to take care of your kid. It's because on a subconscious level, your core value gets either rewritten to taking care of your child or not. And then afterwards, you start rationalizing around it. Isn't that crazy? So if you make making sense your core value on a subconscious level, you change everything from one day to another. Your entire drive, all your direction, everything changes. And yet, you don't even know why. You start figuring it out afterwards because your conscious mind is an extension of your subconsciousness. And we've always thought it was the other way around. We are living a life where we think that our consciousness is making the decision. It's the other way around. And that's why rewiring your subconsciousness allows you to give you so much power. More power than anything. And you can't do that. You just got to convince your inner child. You know how important this insight is? What I just said now? Why did I never learn that? I've never learned this. I just figured it out myself. So everybody are literally just machines running on their core subconscious value. You change that, their behavior changed completely. But that is why this is going to cause a psychological revolution, because we didn't know that. All we do is we go through life and we have the arrogance to think that our consciousness makes all decisions. We have the arrogancy to all have all these layers and look at the world and go like, this is why I make a choice. No, fuck that shit. This is not why you like this music. This is not why you do that. It's backwards rationalized. Your subconscious dictates it to you and you try to make sense out of it. And it makes so much sense because your subconsciousness was there before your more advanced part of the brain. Of course, it's going to direct it. But we have the ability to tell our inner child, like, listen to me. If you make sense your core value instead, you're going to benefit so much more of it. It's going to help you so much more. And then suddenly, from one day to another, your subconsciousness starts trying to make sense out of everything. Out of the blue. I talked to a guy, man. I'm serious. The guy told me that from one moment to another, he changed completely. I've never seen that in my life. I mean, I've talked to a lot. I've done Real Talk for 2 years now. And I've never had a guy talking to me like someone that was zero potential and suddenly became 8 on 8. Just with making sense his core value instantly. He just said like everything makes sense. He went from an emotional liable person to a rational person from one day to another. Can you believe that? Just because his subconsciousness was feeding him different stuff that suddenly tried to make sense, and your entire brain starts rewiring itself all automatically. And that's why this insight can revolutionize the world. I'm not saying this because I'm crazy. I'm saying this because I start understanding how the brain works. Your subconsciousness dictates what you think, what you want, what you really desire. It's not your consciousness. Your consciousness just tries to make sense of your subconsciousness. And your subconsciousness is your inner child. It's your more primitive version. Of course, when you come with reason and stuff, it doesn't click because your primitive version doesn't understand it. It doesn't understand reason. It understands comfort, feelings. So you got to communicate it in a passionate way. You got to really set your inner child at ease and tell it like, it's going to be all right. You can trust making sense. It has an answer to everything. There is a reason for why you feel the way you feel. And having making sense as your core value will help you overcome it. This is your happy place. And if you really adopt that and understand, your subconsciousness will automatically take it as a core value. Because that's what it wants. Your core value wants to survive. And if it really, not rationally, but emotionally understands that, it just eats it up. And suddenly, you're a new person. From one moment to another. I will tell you something really crazy. And this is going to be a mindfuck for a lot of people. And the reason why I'm explaining this is because Nolan is experiencing it. The reason why Nolan came over here to work in this environment was because he wanted to be part of a group that has a purpose. That was his core value. So the reason why he's doing all what he does is because he wants to fit in. He wants to be part of a group. Still has quite some awareness, but fitting in is quite an important part. And now a lot of people, depending on how far you are, how much independent you are, you want more to be part of a group, or want certain validation. I'm not saying like no one doesn't need so much validation, but he has that need to fit in, to want to be part of something bigger. So when I talked to him, I explained this, and he said like, yeah, I have a hard time. I said like, and this is also applied to you guys. If you guys really care a lot about what I say, or if you care a lot about what your family thinks about you, or your friends, or whatever, in a sense, if you want to do it for your family, if Nolan would want to make the decision for the group because he knows it's better, he has to first let it go. You have to first let go for who you're doing it. Like on a subconscious level, you gotta let it go. Because if you don't, it will never happen. You will just build it on top of it. And you might say like, but wait, I can't just let it go. That's the thing. That means you're still attached to it. And like Nolan was like, man, this is really like a mindfuck for me. I said like, but imagine you get kicked out. Your world will crumble, right? She's like, yeah. So like, well, yeah, that's not good. If making sense is your core value and you get kicked out, you just get like, sup brah, have a nice day. I'll figure it out back home and I'll start there over again. That's the difference. Like, I care about my family, but if tomorrow for some reason there's a bomb and all my family is dead, I'm not gonna break down. I'm not gonna kill myself. I'm just gonna try and see it. I'm gonna value what I lost, but I'm gonna move on. And isn't that better? Same with people that go into relationships and the relationship is everything for them. And then their girlfriend dumps them and suddenly their entire world collapses. There's even people that kill themselves because of that. Think that's how it should be? No, of course not. And that's the craziness about making sense as a core value. You have to let go everything and then you have to build it back up. But it's easy if what you value makes sense, because you can just click it back on top of it. But going through that insight goes about with a lot of emotion. It's not so easy. It's very fearful, because fitting in, or your family or your friends or whatever, gives you a sense of safety. But then when your family wants you to do things you don't want to do, you experience dissonance, and it's hard to combine. I'm just giving examples here. Let's say your family is your most important core value and your family wants you to study and do stuff you don't want to do. You're just conflicted. So much contradiction. You get split apart. You get depressed. Let's say you take distance of all of that. You take making sense as a core value, and then you start valuing your family from that foundation. Then suddenly when they tell you what to do, what you don't want to do because it doesn't make sense, you can combine them in a way that makes sense. You don't have to cut yourself in two. You can actually say like, this is what I value about my family, this is what I want, and you can have both coexist without war. Do you guys understand how deep this goes, what I'm explaining here? When you don't experience purpose, but at the same time you want to have fun, and you keep having fun, you play games, but you still have an urge to do something because it's part of what you are. You want to evolve, you want to grow, but you feel like you're slowing yourself down because happiness and having fun is your core value. A moment where you have to take distance from it, you go like, but what about all my fun, well, what if I tell you if you make sense, you'll be more fulfilled, more happy than anything else. You won't have these conflicts. You will know what you want. This insight is so important. It can change your life for the better, guys. I'm telling you, it will do so much. But of course, it takes sacrifices in a sense. You gotta disconnect from certain things, and it's really hard. Some people can't even do it. I'll tell you guys something else that is really crazy. And this might sound very attractive to some people. There's one guy that's here, Raphael, and he has quite some confidence issues. And when I talked about his core value, he had a very hard time to pinpoint what his core value was, because he feels very unconfident and quite, all out there. Because taking a core value, he doesn't even have the confidence to do that. So when I explained like making sense, make your core value, he had quite some issues doing it, but he tried it. And as he's doing it and trying it and really like meditating on it, he told me, because I told him like, has this been the biggest confidence boost you've ever gotten? And he says, no, like when a chick maybe gives me like some confidence, maybe I could have gotten more confidence boost or whatever. But he did say that from his entire life, this was the biggest confidence he has gotten from himself, and that it started growing on him. He started generating the ability to give himself confidence. So everybody there that really has low self-esteem and low confidence or whatever, making sense your core value allows you to start giving yourself confidence without outside source. It's quite powerful to think that, because I didn't know that. I'm just asking these questions here. Like, I'm not going here like, with like in biblical water or something. I just ask questions. I say like, oh, you tried it? What do you think? There's no rule here. You got to have making sense of your core value. We just talk about it, and it's been changing people here like crazy. Like their biggest growth is because of this stupid thing. If it works here, it can work for quite some people watching the stream. Cleaner Pumps and Style, just pretend that making sense is the safest and nicest thing to have until I love it emotionally. Well, it's really hard for me to say. If I could just say how to do it, I would have already done it. But the problem is every single person needs its own map to locate how to do it. And that's why it's so important for you to do it. And that's why I have the subreddit. There you can just share if you figure out how you did it. You can share it so other people can read it and go like, that's how it works. Because it's different for person to person. When people have a big ego or identity, they try to grab the inside and show it off in front of their house and show like, hey, look, I make sense. But that's the thing. You're not absorbing it. You're using it as a tool to strengthen your identity, and that misses the point. And that is a reaction that a lot of people do. And I understand that's just part of reality. As people grow up, they go through a phase where they want to impress, where they want to, show off. And then these insights, even though they're intelligent or whatever, you just try to grab them to make your armor shine more, make your, intelligence shine more. But they go to waste. The insight goes to waste that way. And if you realize what I just said, it could help you a lot. But of course, you're going to have to crack this entire identity wall. And that's really hard because suddenly you're a lot less confident. Green Tea say, I think so we should give up our identity. Your identity is a way for you to give yourself confidence when you lack it naturally. So everybody with a big ego is someone that actually lacks a level of confidence. Because if you have a very high level of confidence, you don't need an ego identity in front of it. It just comes out of it naturally. And that's when you see someone very charismatic, someone really charismatic. It just comes from the inside, not from a shield. And you might say like, yeah, but identity helps me get that confidence. Yeah, but like if making sense is your core value, you'd be able to start generating that confidence on a more structured way. Of course, I don't know to which extent it applies to everyone. Maybe if people are too young and don't have the mental capacity to apply making sense and gather knowledge, maybe there is certain situations where having an identity or ego can be more practical to grow. But it's very hard for me. It depends, because I don't have so much insight in how the brain develops for each person separately. I know there is a certain age where you start adopting this identity and ego dynamics as you become more intellectual and your more prefrontal cortex start developing and such. You create these identities, these layers. It's like almost like an onion. You create these layers. And for some people, these layers can be very helpful and give them some foundation to be able to grab making sense. But I do think that you can just get making sense as a core value even when you're very young. If you teach this insight in schools when you really grow up and you're really young and you really explain like, yeah, this has to be your core value, and it's also from your parents. Their parents say like, this is important, your core value, blah, blah, blah. I really think you can grow up with making sense, having your core value, and it's just GG. But the problem is parents don't make any sense in their actions. So when their child see everything being illogical and just go like, why do you do this, Papa? Why do you drink? Why do you smoke? I read that it was unhealthy. Then suddenly you go like, shut the fuck up. So the kid cannot make sense as its core value. That's why it has to make up all other bullshit. It's not as easy, but I do think if it was educated and stuff, making sense would much more easily like grow. But I think what I do here with the stream also already works quite a bit.
Subscribe to youtube.com/AtheneWins. Watch the live stream at twitch.tv/AtheneLive and follow the real Athene on Snapchat.